With me today is Steve Wiley. He's the Senior Vice President of Preconstruction at James McHugh Construction Company. McHugh is an old Chicago firm, 1897 it was founded, fourth generation ownership, a well-established firm. They do 80% of their projects are lead projects. And Steve's in charge of 11 estimators there. He's been there for 16 years. And Steve's going to kind of run us through why pre-construction is important and some of the things that he and his team bring to the projects that McHugh does. So, Steve, what's the basics of pre-construction? It's kind of like the start of everything, isn't it?
Yeah, Rob. In our multifamily projects, typically these are not plan and specs jobs. So there is a process of working with the owner and design team to establish budgets, scope of work, and it's a very iterative process throughout the steps to get to the completion point of pre-construction is obviously when we can start actually building the project.
Yeah, you've got a lot of, as you mentioned the word iterative, you're keeping going back and forth, aren't you, with the developer, the owner, the architect, and so forth, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, we sure are. Typically, we'll get some very conceptual sketches from an architect or a client. And in order to start the budget process, what we will do is we'll take those, several sketches and we'll turn them into a basic 3D model, which helps us establish a tool to develop quantities and materials and systems. And we use that to populate our budget. And we also use that as a tool to be able to explain back to the client everything that's in his budget. And we can point and say, okay, this line item right here occurs up here on the roof, and here's what it looks like.
We've got a couple. You've given us a couple of examples of these little models not little models, but models that you produce. One of them just shows the framing of a building here. What's going on here, Steve?
Yeah, so that's a very simple model that we create in SketchUp, and it allows us to do a framing plan, wall framing, exterior wall sheathing,
right,
rough openings for windows, floor joists. That's a basic assembly.
Let's turn to one that's a little bit more complex. We've got an apartment building. Now you're not trying to put the architect out of work here. I mean, you're just giving kind of a core and shell kind of framework for this thing. So let's talk about this apartment concept, if you will.
Certainly, yeah. So this was the result of getting some 2D drawings, and again, we'll take those 2D drawings. It's a little bit more than a sketch. But we'll turn those 2D drawings into a 3D model, and it's really useful in being able to quantify, like the exterior enclosure, for example. Obviously, the exterior enclosure of a building is a fairly expensive component. This allows us to build that exterior enclosure in all of the different components, whether it be slab edge covers, window wall, balcony doors, metal panels, you name it, we can plug it into a model and get very exact quantities from the model.
And really, this is, from what I gather, this is kind of performing a couple of important functions. One, it's giving the developer owner who may not be able to read plans or blueprints or anything some idea of what the thing's sort of going to look like, and it becomes kind of a marketing tool, doesn't it? In that way.
It does. It serves a lot of purposes. I mean, you hit on some of them right there, and not the least of which is we're able to, create a model that has quantities associated with it. So it's more than just a pretty picture. It's an extremely useful tool.
Yeah.
And
then you can.
The owner.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. You go.
If the owner wants to change something, so when he sees what we've modeled, okay, this is our interpretation of what you've asked for. He may say, I don't like this. I want you to change X to Y. And we can do that fairly quickly and represent that change to him.
And crucially, for you as the representative of the contractor on this job, you've got to present something that's constructible. Now, let's take a look at this hotel job you worked on here in Chicago. And this was a really difficult structural and constructability question, wasn't it?
Extremely difficult. At first, we had no idea how we were going to accomplish the structural work that was required.
Don't say that. I'm losing all my confidence here.
Well, again, Rob, I think this illustrates the real usefulness of 3D models in our industry, because we can create a theoretical work plan, and we can prove out that work plan within the model. We prove that it works, or if it doesn't work, we can go in and make adjustments. We can tweak it, and we can see where bottlenecks occur, or things that we didn't consider, and then we can adjust the model and make accommodations for all of that stuff. And in this case,
this one you had a big, you had a big structural situation here, did you not?
We did. So we have to replace the old steel beams that are encased in concrete that support the exterior wall of the hotel as well as the sidewalk. And so it's a fairly complicated process of underpinning the existing beams and then removing in sections the old beam, and then filling that old beam space back in to bridge the gap between the floor that was supported by the old beam and where the new underpinning beam is.
Tell me the good news. Did the building stand up?
It's in the process of standing up. We're not quite done yet.
All right, good. A couple of other things. How long does pre-construction take?
Again, Rob, for the projects that we do where it's not just plans and specs, we're brought in early in the process, and we'll assist the client and the design team. It could be, it's typically a 1-year process, I would say, on average.
Okay. Are clients pushing you to make that 3 months?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then you ignore them and just keep going. Okay. Right.
Yeah. Our deadlines continue to get shorter and shorter.
One curious thing, I understand that you at McHugh like to do your projects, your major projects, as design build for structural and for MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Is that yes. Correct? Why do you do that?
Well, cost is really the driver. We've been able to save our clients money by doing the structure design build as well as MEPs. So on the structure, which generally we self-perform, we will work with a structural engineer to optimize the columns, the core and shear walls, the floor slabs. Work with them on drift and deflection issues,
right?
And we can shave it down to a system that's very efficient, very cost efficient, and yet performs to the requirements of the project.
And those two functions, structural and MEP, are a huge chunk of the budget. I mean, anywhere from 50 to 70%, isn't it? Something in that range. I mean, it's pretty big. So all the glossy stuff is nice, but this is where the real money is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
In a project. Yeah. Steve, if you had any advice, as we sum up here, if you had any advice to our audience, architects, engineers, contractors, developers, owners, what's one thing about pre-construction that they should know that would help them come out with better projects?
I would encourage any client or design team to engage a contractor as early as possible in the process.
Right.
It will only benefit their project in the end.
Right. Don't wait till you've gone so far that the constructability and all the details and the cost and the budgeting is too far along to have a benefit.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, I've been talking to Steve Wiley, the Senior Vice President of Pre-Construction at James McHugh Construction here in Chicago, where I live. And I'm going to go downtown and see that building and make sure that it's standing up properly, Steve. So do a good job.
Let me know, Rob.
Okay?
Let me know.
Thanks a lot, Steve. We appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.